You ever watch such bad football that you get a headache? Yeah, that's about how my week's going so far. Welcome to Steel Nation, I guess.
Here we go, Steelers, here we go. Pittsburgh's gone to Super Bowl, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sunday's game was a train wreck. It was bad. It was really, really bad. On the bright side, though, I streamed it with my dad, which was fun. We called out all the plays. We talked about the team. We talked about the game. Unfortunately, it was a game that we lost 20-10, and it was not fun. It wasn't fun. The stream itself was absolutely fun. I enjoyed myself. It was a great time. Thank you to everybody who came out for a little bit and hung out with us and talked to us. But the game itself was hard to watch. I mean, for one, Kenny Pickett goes down with a rib injury. He's questionable for Thursday's game against the Titans. Minkah Fitzpatrick goes down with a hamstring injury. He's probably going to be out for a couple of weeks. We still don't have Cameron Hayward back from IR, which is already a not so great, aspect of things. And as I said, we have a short week going up against the Tennessee Titans, who are a team that I can't really put my finger on. Like, on one hand, they're beating really good teams. And on the other hand, they're, not beating teams they should be beating. Now, they're bringing out Will Levis, and he's going to start for the Thursday night game against us. And he absolutely crushed it this week. He scored 4 touchdowns, which is his first start of the season, which is incredible. But, so that's got me kind of concerned. But let's talk about Sunday's game. And we're going to go through some stats, and we're going to talk about it, because this game, I've got some choice words for this game, specifically involving the refs, because the refs and the refereeing this whole season has been not good. And I mean, some of the calls have been on our side, they've been good for us. Bad calls have been good for us. And I will admit that. I will say they're bad calls. I'm still happy they were called because they were called for us. This last game, though, I feel like one of the referees caught, the anti-Steelers bug or something. Because this week it was just flag on us and flag on us and flag on us and flag on us. It was rough. The biggest example that I have, early on in the first half, Trevor Lawrence is hit hard for a sack. And they throw a flag, they say roughing the passer. That's fine. It was a hard hit. However, not even a couple of plays later, the exact same kind of hit is brought on Kenny Pickett. No flag is called. There was no roughing the passer call. It was the same kind of hit. It was the exact same intensity as when Trevor Lawrence was hit. Nothing. Then later, same exact thing. Kenny Pickett is hit. This time, I think it should have been a late hit, but he was just hit. And no roughing the passer flag. And Kenny Pickett now has a rib injury. Thanks to that. And because of that, we had to bring in Mitch Trubisky. And he played about as well as you could expect. Let's look at the stats. Kenny Pickett, he had 16 attempted throws in the game. He made 10 of them. That's actually really good. 10 out of 16. He missed 6 throws. That's fine. That is a fine stat for how long he was in the game. He had 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 3 FPTS. I'll figure this out. Give me a second. And, okay. So FPTS seems to mean fantasy points, meaning that in the time that Kenny Pickett was on the field, he got 3 fantasy points, which is very bad, but he was only on for a little bit of time. Trubisky, on the other hand, 27 attempts, 15 completions. Barely half. He threw for 1 touchdown, which is awesome, but he threw for 2 interceptions, which is not awesome. Also a whopping 8 fantasy points. So, even combined between the two of them, this entire game got a whopping 11 fantasy points. 11! The production of the Steelers offense is awful. Let's compare that to Trevor Lawrence, who threw 32 attempts and completed 24 of them. So he missed 8 attempts. That's fairly good. Threw for 1 touchdown, threw for 1 interception, and gained 16 fantasy points. More than both of our quarterbacks combined. Let's talk about rushing yards. Jaylen Warren, 5 attempts for 19 yards, had the most rushing yards on the team at 19. 19! Followed by Trubisky with 18 on 3 rushes. Najee Harris with 13 on 7. That's more, by the way. More attempts for less yards. Kenny Pickett with 10 yards on 1 rush, which means he's already better than literally every other one of our running backs. And Calvin Austin III, who's given 2 handoffs, got 10 yards for it. No rushing touchdowns at all. Nothing. We could not get the run game going whatsoever. Whereas on the other side, Travis Etienne was given the ball 24 times for 79 yards. 79. He got 25 fantasy points. And the best part about it, my dad has him on his fantasy team. So I was getting beat in the face by Jacksonville in 2 different ways. Both on the fantasy field and in the actual game. So let me just be frank, okay? I know my name is Brian, but let me just be frank for a second. We suck. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. We are a bad football team. And I don't even know if I can continue blaming Canada for this. Because while sure, he's not a great offensive coordinator, this game was not full of run, pass, run, pass. It was full of a lot of throw, dropped catches, or just missed catches. Like, it's not 100% on the quarterback. Well, yes, Mitch Trubisky was just awful when he came out onto the field. It's not all on him. It's not all on Pickett. It's also got to be put partially onto the receivers because they just weren't good either. I mean, Deontay Johnson coming back, he got some pretty good receptions. Let's go to receiving. He was our highest receiver. He got 14 targets. He recorded 8 catches for 85 yards. That's respectable. Didn't have any passing touchdowns, which wasn't great. But, 85 yards is still good. Followed up, Najee Harris was actually our second most active receiver. Our running back was our second most active receiver with 5 targets, 5 receptions, So, a perfect reception rate, which was good, made 42 yards, still no touchdowns. The only person on the team who has a touchdown this game, the only touchdown we scored this game, was George Pickens. And with Pickens, it was 5 targets, 1 reception. 1. 5 targets, 1 of them did anything. 1. I mean, and of course, that was the 1 target that got us a touchdown. But still, that's not good. That's not a good percentage. That is 20%. That's 20%. And sure, in the grand scheme of things, 20% is not bad. But that would be if he was throwing the ball 100 times, he caught it 20 times. That's awful statistics. 1 out of 5 doesn't seem terrible until you expedite it out and realize that out of 100, that's 20 catches. That's horrible. Like, if you went and you said, hey, I gave you $100, you lent your friend $100, and they're like, hey, man, I can only pay you 20%, I can only give you $20 back, that's all I'm ever going to be able to give you, you'd be kind of upset, right? Because $20 is not even close to 100. So 20% is not a good percentage when it comes to catching the football. Like, that's the one thing that he's paid to do, is catch the football. And he couldn't do that. Now, there is a very good chance that it's just because the Jacksonville defense is really good, because throughout the game they were double-teaming George Pickens because they've seen how well he's been doing throughout the season. This could be a fluke game. I think it's going to be a fluke game. But that was still not a good percentage point. Like, 20% catches that's cut territories. That's the area where you cut players. If they can only get 20% of catches, they're not on the team. They don't play football. They're bagging groceries. But I digress. The whole team just sucked. The defense looked bad. Like, TJ Watt looked good, as he normally does. Alex Highsmith looked good, as he normally does. We had several sacks. Let's look at it real quick. See if I can find the stats for the defense. Roberts has 1.5 sacks. Alex Highsmith had half of a sack. TJ Watt also had half of a sack. So all in all, and A. Watts. Okay, there's another person with the name Watts on the team. But he also had half of a sack. So the defense wasn't terrible. I mean, they weren't good, but they also weren't terrible. And that just seems to be, as I've said before, that seems to be the standard when it comes to the Steelers team. We're not good, but we're not terrible. Except for this week, where I would say, with the way the defense played and the way the offense played, we were pretty terrible. I mean, sure, we didn't let 40 points go to the Jaguars, but we let 20. We were 10 points behind. We could have come back and won this game. The defense was at least okay, but the offense was so bad that it just drags everybody else down. And it sucks. It truly does, because like this team is everything to me. And I love this team, and I'll never stop loving this team. But watching us go from good games to this is depressing, because it just shows that we don't actually care, it seems, about winning. We care about keeping a consistent form. And it definitely doesn't help now that the trade deadline has passed, and we did nothing with it. We did nothing. Like, literally. I was talking to my dad on the live stream, and I asked him, of all the starters, who do you think would be the most useful starter to trade away to get maybe more draft capital or another player? And he didn't give me an answer, because he said the Steelers would never do that. And you know what? He's right. The Steelers would never do that. Not because it's a good strategy, but because the Steelers are so set on being like a family and never like letting their family go that it hurts the overall team. Now, I understand like keeping people around that you feel like are going to have breakout years, or you think it just had a bad game or a bad here and there is fine. I get that. You don't want to make people upset. You want to be nice to people. But in my opinion, and I understand some people might not like this, Najee Harris has not done enough for this team to warrant a spot on the roster. Especially not a starting spot on the roster. I mean, let's see if I can pull up his season-long stats, because they've not been good. Let's see, Najee Harris. So far, in the regular season, he's been given the ball 84 times. He's run for 313 yards. 3.7 yard average. That is very, very low. He has 1 touchdown. And while his longest run is 24 yards, that 3.7 is still not great. Now let's look for a moment at Jaylen Warren's stats for the season, because his stats, I'm sure, will be different. With 45 attempts at 175 yards, he's averaged 3.9 yards per carry. That's a little bit more than Najee Harris. Also not great, but let's see. So he was 45. Najee has been 84. That's half the carries. They're taking away from one or the other by having 2 starting running backs. And it's not working out the way they want to. For one, the stats for both of them are just down the drain in terms of rushing yards, in terms of attempts, in terms of runs per carry. The yards per carry is not on the running back as much as it's on the offensive line, which is also just awful. It's like paper. I don't understand how we got worse from last year, but we did. Now let's look real quick. Let's see if I can find the best running backs in the league. Let's see. Let's go to Saquon Barkley. Let's go to Joe Mixon and the Bengals. So Joe Mixon is the starting running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's been given the ball 112 times. He has gained 453 yards with 4 average yards per carry, which is 3 better than Najee Harris, 1 better than Jalen Warren. He has 2 touchdowns, and his longest is 22. So individually, both of our running backs are about the same as someone like Joe Mixon. Someone like Christian McCaffrey, no way. Christian McCaffrey is a beast, and we all know this, so is someone like Nick Chubb. But we don't need 2 people who have the exact same stats. If we traded Najee away, we could bring in another piece to add to the offensive line to give Jalen Warren a shot at actually doing something on offense. Or we could bring in somebody on the defense to beef up our secondary, because right now, and especially with Minka Fitzpatrick out, our secondary is just bad. Like, the whole team could benefit from new talent being brought in at the trade deadline, and the Steelers decided to do nothing at all. And I understand, okay? I'm not a football person. I'm not a coach. I never played football. I'm not anybody who knows anything about football. But what I am is a fan. And I'm a fan who is sick and tired of seeing the great talent we have on the field be squandered because our quarterback cannot get the ball out without defenders bearing down, our running backs cannot get through the line of scrimmage, and our defense keeps letting plays through. Like, we have George Pickens. He's a really, really good ball catcher. But he can't do anything unless the ball is thrown to him. And it's not getting thrown to him as often. And it definitely doesn't help when he's not catching the ball. Because even while, as I said, he's a good ball catcher, he's struggling. And I don't know why that is. It could be something getting into his head. Or maybe he's throwing the game so Canada will be fired. I honestly hope that's the case. And speaking of Canada, why he's still around is a mystery to me. The whole fan base wants him gone, and yet the entirety of the Steelers front office is like, no, we'll keep him around. We'll keep him around, and we'll tick off the fans even more. And I'm kind of upset about that, because anywhere you go, they're even chanting "Fire Canada" at non-Steelers, non-Pittsburgh games. That is how bad it's getting. Other teams that have no affiliation with Pittsburgh or the AFC North, you can hear chants of "Fire Canada." That is how widespread our fan base is, and B, how badly this guy is calling plays. Like, the fact that he still has a job amazes me. But what amazes me more, I guess, is the fact that Tomlin hasn't said anything about firing him. He hasn't said anything about replacing him. In fact, the only thing that he said is that he's not going to fire him, which I feel like is a bad move because it makes people hate Tomlin now. And I think Tomlin is a good coach. I just think that he's not behind the wheel anymore, which sucks because, maybe if he was a little bit more involved and, kept the players humble and not, let them run their mouth like they have been, we'd be a better football team. And speaking of that, I want to talk about something I read online a couple of days ago. I don't know if this is true, but I read an article that said something to the tune of Matt Canada has started blaming the offense for all of our offensive woes. He's blaming his players for the shortcomings of the offense. And while I agree, some of these issues are the players' fault, the biggest problem that I have is the offensive coordinator, is Matt Canada. And as an offensive coordinator, you don't blame the players. You don't blame the players. You say there's some issues, we're going to work to fix it, it's on everybody. The second you start blaming people and not blaming yourself and not saying, hey, maybe I screwed up, I don't know, is the second that everybody turns on you. And we've already turned on you. So we're more against you now. Okay? So the fact that you're now blaming the players for these problems and not taking some responsibility just shows how incompetent you are at your job. And the fact that he's not gone yet still amazed me. In fact, he was a college offensive coordinator before he came to the NFL, and even then, he didn't do a good job. I don't think he's ever made it to a bowl game in college or in the NFL. And the past few years, he's been coasting off of Big Ben. But even then, you could tell there was a big dip in quality between before Canada and after Canada with Ben. And it doesn't have everything to do with the fact that Ben was hurt, which that has something to do with it. But now you have an entire fresh new offense. You have no more excuses. You have no more excuses. And at this point, there's a chance that we might draft a new quarterback within the next 2 years if the offense doesn't pick up. And if we draft a quarterback before changing offensive coordinators, then I guarantee you a lot of fans are done. Because Matt Canada is the problem. He is one of the problems. He's one of the easiest problems to fix. He's not a player. He's not under contract. I mean, he is, but it's not like a guaranteed like a player. He's not affecting the salary cap. You can fire him, give him $1 billion to, cushion his fall out the door, bring in somebody who knows what they're doing, and it's not going to affect the salary cap of the team. But bringing in a new quarterback would affect the salary cap. So fix the issue that would affect the team the least first and see if that helps. And then, if it doesn't help, evaluate other aspects of the team. But at this point, I'm rambling, so I'm just going to finish off with just a couple things. I just want to reiterate, the game sucked. Okay, we did bad. There's no sugarcoating it. And with Kenny Pickett out and questionable for Thursday, I don't know if we're going to win against the Titans. However, and I want to let you all know about this. I'm going to be streaming the Thursday night game as well, just like I did the Sunday game against the Titans. It's going to be right here on this channel. It's going to start at 8 o'clock. Kickoff is at 8:15. It's just going to be me this time. My dad's not going to be joining us. He'll be back with us eventually. That was sort of like a one thing to kick off the whole streaming thing. Going forward, I'm going to be streaming mostly on my own. So if you guys want, you can hop on into the chat. You can sync up your TV with my conversations. I'm going to be, calling every single snap. I'm going to be talking about what I see on the field, about how I think we can progress, and, we can just chat. We can talk. I can answer some questions. I think it's going to be fun. So Thursday at 8 o'clock here on this channel, tune in for the Steelers-Titans game. Other than that, I wish there was something more better that I could say about this game, but it was pretty bad. So, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And if you want, more of this type of content, more of my face, more of, Steelers breaking down the games and stuff, make sure to hit that notification bell and turn notifications to all so you get notifications anytime that I upload a video. As I've said, I have been Brian, and go Steelers.